Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every week.
We do.
So why not press subscribe and the alert button so that you can keep up with our fabulous gardening adventures.
They are fabulous. Now, if you've got a burning horticultural question for Mr. Ryan, do put it in the comments below and say where you're from in the world for context, and he will answer them every Monday in our shorts.
We'll do our very best on that one.
Now, Stephen, I'm seeing some beautiful spring colour behind us.
Yes, we're in one of Mount Macedon's iconic gardens, and we've got rhododendrons and azaleas and all sorts of things in flower around us at the moment.
But
it's not what we're here for. As much as they're really pretty, we've come here specifically for a very interesting small genus of plants that does particularly well in much the same conditions as you in fact would grow rhododendrons and azaleas.
well, without further ado, let's go the other side of the weeping holly for the big reveal.
Oh, let's.
So what is the mystery plant, Stephen?
Well, you're standing right in front of it.
Yes.
Or at least one of the species thereof. So these are a plant known as Enkianthus, which comes from the Greek pregnant flower. Because, yeah, I know, it doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense, but some species have quite big sepals, so it looks like there's a flower coming outside of a flower.
Oh, okay.
So it's being born. So Enkianthus, it's a very small genus. There's only 13 accepted species. They're all restricted to Asia, so Japan, China, down into Hong Kong, new territories, and I think down into Vietnam as well. There's one evergreen species from the Hong Kong New Territories, but all of the others are deciduous shrubs, and if you've got the right growing conditions, are fabulous garden plants.
This looks absolutely stunning. So let's then talk about the right growing conditions. So we're in Durrell, which is one of the great gardens of Mount Macedon. We've been here a few times.
Yes, we did an epic on hollies for Christmas 2 years ago, I think.
Yes, we've done a garden tour here and also an Edna Walling story, because Edna Walling was involved in the garden at one point. So I'll put all those videos up. So we're sort of at the top of Mount Macedon, just
more or less,
about.
yes.
So give an idea of the climate to the viewers.
All right. Well, we have a cool climate, so it gets some winter cold. Of course, the higher up on the hill you get, the less frost you actually get. But these plants are pretty well frost hardy, albeit the evergreen one maybe not. So all the deciduous ones will grow quite well in a quite winter cold area. They don't like to get too hot and dry in the summer, so they need, as I mentioned in the intro, they really need similar conditions to what you'd grow azaleas and rhododendrons in, which isn't all that surprising considering they're actually in the same plant family as well. So they're in the Ericaceae family, so they're quite closely related to blueberries, rhododendrons, azaleas, ericas, all those things in that particular large and very important family.
And are they also going to want slightly acidic soil there?
Oh yes, they definitely need an acidic soil. There are a few ericaceous things that in fact will cope with
We'll get to the smell.
But all the Enkianthuses do in fact like an acidic soil with a fairly high humus content. And for me, I think a good mulch over them works quite well as well.
So these are actually quite exposed. So are they like an understory woodland shrub, or what's the ideal position for them?
In the wild, they'd grow in a mixed woodland setting. They'd get some filtered sunlight through. We're high enough on Mount Macedon where they'll grow right out in the open virtually. But having said that, the further down the hill you go, the more shelter I would give them, albeit be careful not to put them in too much shade, because then they'll grow very open, not flower terribly well, and not do the other thing that they do exceedingly well with all the deciduous ones, and that's turn blazing colours in the autumn.
This is covered in blossom. It's absolutely stunning. I was just laughing because I smelt it, and let's just say it smells like a teenage boy's bedroom. Not something that you... Anyway.
Maybe just this one. I'd never noticed a scent with them before, but you shove your nose into everything. What can I say?
Yeah.
The other thing you need to know about them, though, is they also have this elegant oriental feel to all of the shrubs as well. So even when they're bare in the winter, their tracery is quite elegant. I love everything that has that sort of tabulated form, and Enkianthuses do that quite well.
Now, I think you alluded to this. in terms of how old is this specimen?
Well, I would say these are at least 30, maybe 40 years old.
So not the fastest of growers.
Which then does make them very good as tub specimens if you're looking for something interesting and you grow in a large pot. So yes, they take a long time to get up to this sort of size.
Yeah.
So if you want a big Enkianthus, you have to plant them 20 years ago.
All right, well look, why don't we just look at each, there's a cluster here, let's
Yep.
look at each one and then we'll go and find the massive one that's in the Edna Walling
All
garden.
right, what a good idea.
All right, so let's talk more about this one. It is so pretty.
It is, it's very sweet indeed. The
Yeah.
flowers have got this lovely sort of pinkish colour.
Do you know what it's reminding me of?
What?
Clethra.
Interesting, because it does have a certain similarity, but funnily enough, they're in different plant families.
Just the way-
Clethraceae.
Just the way the flowers are sort of clustered and hanging.
Yeah, so this particular one is one of the more commonly available species, and it's rather appropriately known as Enkianthus campanulata, which means bell-like.
Ah.
And the flowers are just like little bells, and it can vary from pure white through to dark pinks. And we've actually got two different forms of it here. Will you stop being
The smell.
distracted by the smell? You're putting people off growing Enkianthus, and I think they're fabulous plants.
They are. You just don't stand so close.
Yes, that's right. So campanulatus you can get in a range of different coloured forms. It always gets this nice tiered layered effect. And in the autumn, its foliage will generally go in shades of yellow through orange to a little bit of scarlety red. So very good autumnal foliage. And of course, the flowers don't become anything particular afterwards.
I was going to say the bees are loving it, so I was wondering if it would have berries or anything.
No. Its seeding vessels are very small, dry capsule-like things that sit upwards, funnily enough, after the flowers are finished, of no particular ornamental value, but they could be useful
merits.
if you want to raise some seedlings. But that's about it. So this one's been run over by the bees in masses, so it could have some quite nice viable seed I should collect later.
And so where is this one from, Stephen?
All right, this one is one of the Japanese species. There's 3 or 4 from Japan, and probably the best known. But it is really quite something. So campanulatus, I love it.
It's covered in bees, actually.
And we should have a look at the other campanulatus that's here just to get a sense of the slight variation between these two. They were obviously originally raised from seed because they are not clonal. I think they're really pretty.
And I must say, your point about the structure, it is a very, very elegant shape.
Oh, it is. It's a beautiful plant.
All right.
And so let's have a look at the other campanulatus, shall we?
Okay. So this is the same plant?
It's the same species, but it's obviously not the same clone. Its flowers are larger. They've got a little bit more white in them. The foliage is slightly bigger. So there are certain variations in this plant, but it still falls within the parameters of Enkianthus campanulatus.
And the shape of this one perhaps isn't quite as satisfying.
Maybe not. It's quite tiered. It's got quite a layered effect. It hasn't flowered as heavily this year as the other one, but that may just be a seasonal thing. Or this one may not be as heavy a flowering clone.
There you go.
Yes, I haven't visited it often enough to know for certain.
Now there's one right next to it, which
Yeah.
are we looking at that as well?
Oh yes. It's
Okay.
a quite different species though. So yes, we
stunning.
need to engage with it too.
Okay, let's shuffle this way. So what's this fabulous one, Stephen?
All right, well this is another Japanese species,
Yep.
and I love this one. It's got wonderful sort of coppery red flowers on it,
Yes.
and it's cernuus Rubens. It's a form from the wild. This one also comes in a white version as well. It is quite an elegant plant. I'm very fond of it. Wonderful layered habit.
It's got an interesting growth habit though, so it seems to send out these really quite strong shoots and then
It
it sort of
does.
pushes up.
Well, what happens is where those new shoots came from, that's where the next layer will form.
Right.
So that's why you have that sort of stepped appearance in the growth. It's doing the classical Enkianthus thing, becoming that lovely tabulated shrub.
Yeah.
So you've got these little red flowers on it. Now in the autumn, this one will go brilliant scarlet. So it'll go really wonderful scarlet red. So it really pays its way.
Obviously, by the looks of it, it flowers from older growth.
Yes, it tends to flower on those shorter spurry pieces of growth, not the big long bits so much.
Yeah.
So you need to get those sort of little spurry pieces formed, and then you'll get oodles of flowers.
And they're not necessarily something you'd want to prune, any of these. Either.
Oh no, look, I think a heavily pruned Enkianthus would probably be a ruined Enkianthus personally. So
and as it's slow growing, that's a long time.
Yeah, if you've got to do it, it would seem a terrible waste of a beautiful shape, because it would then shoot into masses of water shoot type growth, and it'd take years to settle down and get this nice layered effect back.
Right, there you go, don't prune. So same conditions as its cousin?
They all like much the same conditions. As I said, the only one that's a bit of an outrider is the Evergreen one, which is far more cold sensitive. So they all like basically those sort of cool to cold conditions, and not too hot and dry in the summer.
Okay, so I think we're going to go and look at another one now.
Yes.
So we're back in the Edna Walling part of the garden, which we've made a standalone video about, which we'll link. And we talked about this because your point was...
Yes, that I believed it was probably the first and maybe only time that Edna Walling used this particular plant, because it's in a climate where it will grow, whereas a lot of the places where she gardened and designed, Enkianthuses wouldn't have worked. And my gut feeling was that it was imposed upon her by a local nurseryman as something she should plant here. And that's what I believe probably happened.
So what's this one?
All right, well, this one is Enkianthus perulatus, one of the most difficult of all the Enkianthuses to propagate, unfortunately, so you rarely see it for sale around the traps.
Why is that?
Just is.
It just is.
It just is. I have no idea why it's hard to propagate. Most of the others can be struck by cuttings if you've got the right facilities, like mist spray systems, bottom heat, all that sort of stuff. Perulatus, on the other hand, you can sometimes get it to get roots on it, but it goes into its winter dormancy the first year and doesn't break out of it again. So I have lost so many baby plants of this over the years. It can be quite heartbreaking, really.
Now, you were mentioning the seed that it doesn't have berries, which I kind of hoped it would. There's some seed pods.
Yes, there's a few of last year's seed pods on this plant.
So have you tried propagating it from seed?
That's my next trick, is to try and raise them from seed. I have a sense I might be better if I do. And certainly if I raise seedlings and they do come up quite well, I could end up with masses of them.
Well, there you go.
Which would be great.
So this one, given Edna was working a century ago, would be a century old.
Oh yes, it's got to be at least 100 years old, and so it's probably the biggest Enkianthus perulatus that I've come across, certainly. And it's just about finished now, but its little white flowers are very cute, and when it's in full flight, it is just lovely. But come autumn, this is the premier species for autumn colour.
Is it?
Oh, it goes the most remarkable, brilliant burgundy red. It is just eye-poppingly beautiful in the autumn when it turns. So it's one of those Enkianthus that if you do manage to get hold of it, treasure it, because it is beautiful and hard to get. And I'm assuming in Europe and North America it's a little more commonly grown. It's virtually impossible to get here.
Oh, well, that's reassuring, isn't it? Now, that specimen in the lawn, is that the same?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's perulatus as well. So this garden has two large and well-advanced perulatus, two large and well-advanced campanulatus, and one really good cernuus Rubens. And so we've got 4 of the 13 species in the garden already. And the plan long-term, via my suggestion, of course, is that in fact Durrell should be holding a national Enkianthus collection. So I'm on the hunt now to try and add to the collection. I managed to find Michael a plant of Enkianthus quinqueflorus, which comes from the Hong Kong New Territories and down into Vietnam, and that will go into the garden shortly. So that's the evergreen one. And as I get more species come my way, which I've sort of put the word out all around the industry. Hopefully this garden will have as comprehensive collection of Enkianthus as we can manage to find.
There you go. But now I think you've got a specimen of the evergreen one at the nursery.
Yes, we'll go and have a look at that. I've also got a photo I'll lend you of the flower of quinqueflorus, and the flowers are about 3 times bigger than any of the others.
All right, let's go and have a look at that now.
All right. All right, Matthew, this doesn't look a lot like an Enkianthus, but this is the evergreen one that grows in the Hong Kong New Territories and down into Vietnam, quinqueflorus. And if you compare it to my Enkianthus perulatus, you can see that there's not much sort of similarity in leaf size.
No. Now, given where this is from, that would seem to me perhaps subtropical.
Yes, it is. So this one is not cold hardy. Hence part of the reason why it's an evergreen species as opposed to a deciduous one, because it doesn't need to be deciduous in its natural habitat.
Yeah, and you've got an image of the flower which will drop in now.
Yes.
So it looks the same florally.
Although I have to say the flowers are about 3 times bigger than any of the other Enkianthuses I've grown. So it's a much larger flower. It's a little hard to tell from just looking at a picture of a close-up, but it is a much bigger bloom, and it's very important in Hong Kong where it was used for major festivals. There was some Chinese festival, it could be New Year or one of those things, and it was almost picked out of existence.
Well, luckily it isn't, and here it is.
Yes.
Well, what an interesting group of shrubs, Stephen.
Yeah, and not something that sort of pops into people's minds immediately when they're looking for something to plant in their gardens. But I'm hoping some people might well do that now.
Well, you've got to have the right garden, the right climate. Mind you, these would do very well in British gardens and North American gardens.
I've seen them all over the place in northern gardens. So as long as your soil type is naturally acidic, if you can grow rhododendrons, azaleas, all that group of plants, then there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't have Enkianthuses. And because of their fabulous form and their autumn colour, they're actually great companion plants for rhodies and azaleas because they give you things at other seasons.
And they, rhododendrons, bless them, don't do much other than flower.
No, there are 1 or 2 deciduous ones that do some autumn colour, but generally speaking, they're not renowned for other than their spring glory. So Enkianthuses are a great group of plants to mix with them.
Now, Stephen, you've mentioned these are great companion plants for rhododendrons and azaleas. Now, it just so happens, look, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Honestly, this salmon-coloured mollis azalea,
yes, aren't they something else? They're just superb.
it is the most beautiful colour. And then just through there, we're now going to turn cunningly around.
Here we go.
Walk through this bower.
Yes.
Look, honestly, look, isn't that so beautiful? Now, here's a very beautiful yellow one.
Yes, some nice mollis, what you would call rhododendron luteum, probably.
Yeah. Is this the one that's native to the Caucasus?
Yes, it's a lovely yellow, very nice scent, and of course, quite reasonable autumn colour with a lot of these as well.
And I think...
Is it starting to show its scent now?
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Lovely plant.
I was in Georgia, the country, not the state, and saw this in bloom. I was there in the month of May. So obviously spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And I saw this flowering by the side of the road, screech to a halt, because I've never seen a wild rhododendron
Well,
bloom.
there you go.
It was very exciting. Well, and we're gonna spin around once again.
Oh, here we go.
Because up there, look at that beautiful magenta rhododendron.
Yes, that's one of the really old hybrid rhododendrons, one called Broughtonii for anybody who needs to know the name.
So Mr. Ryan was a child savant of rhododendron names, were you not?
Yes, at one stage I had hundreds of them in my head. I think most of them have found their way out now, but still quite a number of the old cultivars are ones that I can remember the names of. So I'm rather hoping they're named somewhere so that when I'm gone, people will still know what their cultivar names are.
Well, there's that one there. Well, thank you once again to the owners of Durrell and the head gardener who's allowed us to mooch about this afternoon.
Yeah. And of course, if you'd like to know what we're doing next week, don't forget to press subscribe and the alert button so that you'll keep up with our adventures.
Indeed. And if you do have a question for Stephen Ryan, do put it in the comments below and he will answer it in our Monday shorts. But until then, we look forward to seeing you next week.
Right, bye all.